Give unto the Lord glory and strength. The voice of the Lord is upon the waters. The God of glory thundereth. The Lord is upon many waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. Give unto the Lord the glory due to his name. Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. The voice of the Lord is upon the waters. The God of glory thundereth. The Lord is upon many waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. Psalm 29, 1 through 4.
Who has a favorite that they would, Maria? Psalms 130. A minor. Out of the depths of Out of the depths do I cry to thee, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice, let mine ears be attentive unto the voice of my supplications. I wait for the Lord, my soul doth wait, and in his word do I hope. My soul waiteth for the Lord. If thou, O Lord, shouldst mark iniquities, O Lord, who shall stand with him that forgiveness with thee, that thou mayst be free? Let his in the Lord, in the Lord, there is mercy, and with him there is plenteous redemption, and he shall redeem Israel from all his iniquities, from all his iniquities, and he shall redeem Israel from all his iniquities, from all his iniquities. Psalm 130, 1 through 8. Isaiah 40.
There are two there. Is it he shall for this one?
Upon the Lord.
C.
They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Teach me, Lord, teach me. Again. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Teach me, Lord, teach me, Lord, to wait.
Thank you for singing.
That we didn't get more snow. Not that I like snow, but it is fun to have a special snow day every once in a while. Next week, we have the week of prayer. I am looking forward to the messages that college students and staff will be presenting. This morning schedule for academy students will be changed. Classes are 5 minutes shorter, start at different times. So you'll want to, both for teachers particularly, to take notice because the bells don't ring on time. So we will need to be kept, and I'm sure students will help keep us on time. Another change that comes is that in the morning, instead of having worship here for college students or in the cafeteria, you will be at 6:45. You should be in the cafeteria just for prayer, and then here at 7:30 in the morning and 6:45 in the evenings for the week of prayer, Monday through Friday. The ESA Music Festival is coming up next month. If you're an academy student and you have grades that will allow you to miss several days of school and you can still catch up, and you participate well in music here, then I want to encourage you to make an application. The applications will be on the business, the ledge by the business office shortly, and there is a $75 cost. Tutoring is available for college and academy students. There are hours posted for math and chemistry, and English tutoring is available by appointment. So I want to encourage you, if you are struggling or at the point of struggling, you don't have to wait till you're struggling, go and get some help. That's why the tutoring center is there, and I know it can be a real blessing to you. I'd invite you to be praying for the week of prayer now, that the Lord will prepare our hearts and the speakers' hearts to receive a rich blessing. Let's kneel as we pray. Lord, this morning I want to thank you for shelter, for a warm place to meet, and for the opportunities that we have to be learners in the school of Christ today. I want to thank you most of all for Jesus and for the difference that knowing him makes in our lives. And I pray that for each student and each staff, that we might experience him in a new way today. and that we will enjoy walking in His presence. Today we want to ask that you will bless Ms. Fox as she shares with us, that you will bless our family members. Lord, you know, many are struggling with one need or another. Draw especially close. I pray for Dr. Ken Lauren, who was injured with the fall in Costa Rica on a mission trip. Lord, that you will work a miracle in his life and that you will bring healing. And I just thank you that we can trust our lives and everything we have in your hands. There's no safer place. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
There's no keynote. There's no keynote in this one, please. No keynote? Can we do it over there?
Sorry, I can't see. Well, we will get started anyway. Maybe it will work or maybe it won't. We're going to talk about time management today. And I'm not quite sure why I was selected to give the assembly talk on time management, unless it's that my employers feel that I need help in this area and that researching it would be good for me, because I don't know that I'm always that great at time management. In fact, when I started preparing this presentation yesterday afternoon, I felt that perhaps procrastination had been a bit of a problem, either that or just too many things to do this week. But we are going to look at some things together. Is it possible to get the presentation running and to show the video clip? It's coming.
We're still having a few technical difficulties.
Technology is never my friend. Okay, well, I'll just give them a chance to get that video up and running. We'll keep going. So we all have this thing called time, but why is this something that is really important to discuss anyway? Here's why. Our time belongs to God. Every moment is His, and we are under the most solemn obligation to improve it to His glory. It comes from Christ's Object Lessons, page 342. Time management isn't really a new concept. Even before clocks existed, humankind understood times and seasons and learned how best to manage those times. The first people that we think used strict planning and daily schedules were in fact the St. Benedictine monks back in the 6th century AD, and they used this.
In this pile, there's one jelly bean for each day that the average American will live. You might have more beans in your life, or maybe less,
part of the
but on
video.
average, this is the time we have.
I won't compete with the jelly beans. Anyway, so the St. Benedictine monks used these schedules and strict things to accomplish more in a day than anyone thought at the time that was humanly possible to even get accomplished in one's day. 500 years ago, Leonardo da Vinci, have you heard of him? Renaissance man, very influential person in the field of arts and so forth. He attempted various different ways to increase his productivity as well. Some of those things were to experiment with different sleep-wake schedules. I wouldn't recommend his method, but he decided that if he slept for just half an hour at different points across the day and night, he could reduce his sleep time to between 2 and 4 hours. So he experimented with that idea. Another thing that he tried to do was to teach himself to be able to draw with one hand and take notes with the other hand at the same time. But it wasn't really until the Industrial Revolution that the philosophy of time management grew exponentially. And now in the 21st century, it's really the most prized commodity that we have, is time, and hard to come by. In our world today, every minute counts, literally. The ability to work efficiently and to have good work productivity and output has become one of the most important characteristics for employees to possess. And whether or not it's a good thing, generally speaking, efficiency and good productivity are now the most valued characteristics for employees to have, even above a good product, just so long as you're fast at it. Is it working? Can you show the video? Okay. So I think we're going to come back to the video. It's still not on the screen. I should just do it without PowerPoint. We all have 24 hours in every day, by the way. But we all have the choice of how to use those 24 hours, and it's that choice that will determine our satisfaction and our success in life. Being busy is not the same thing as being effective. I think we can all probably say that we're very busy here at OHA or OHC. I certainly feel like I'm busy here. And maybe that makes us feel that we are good at time management because we're so busy. In fact, though, the reality could be that the opposite is true. So good time management is about using our time smarter rather than working harder. And the goal is to be able to get more done in less time. And that's what we're going to look at. 3 areas today, break it down into 3 main areas. We're going to chat a little bit about prioritizing, budgeting our time, and then finish with a few practical details about how to maximize our efficiency. I would like to show you this video clip, though. It was supposed to be the introducing thing, but if we can play it, I would like to show it to you. Is it going to work? Okay, let's skip the video, skip the PowerPoint. We'll just go without anything. I think it's too complicated. Okay, number 1, prioritize. There are always going to be things vying for our attention. So it is important to identify our goals and then ascertain what things are going to fit into those goals. So a goal might be something like a long-term career goal, or just your goal for a particular year, or it might in fact be to finish school or get your degree. That might be your goal that you're working towards. This is kind of off-putting, but anyway. Oh, okay. We have it. So that might be your goal, and you need to prioritize the things that will help you to reach those goals. I'm wondering if I can progress the slides, or if you're going to progress them for you. Excellent. Matthew 6:33, a verse that we all know by memory, I think, says, "But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." So the best part about this is that we don't even have to guess what our main priorities should be. The instruction is simple. We need to put God first, always. This means that we give God the best part of our day, not the leftovers. It means that our sacred time with God is the last thing that goes when our schedules get busy or an emergency comes up. It means that our relationship with God and his claim upon our life and our time will influence every decision that we make in order of how to spend every moment that we have. And if we are faithful in this, God will faithfully multiply the minutes that we have left. Pavel Goya, who wrote this book, someone else wrote this book about him, One Miracle After Another. I highly recommend this book if you haven't read it. It's an excellent story. He tells of his conversion experience, at which point he decided to make this commitment. And in his own words, he said, "I'm never going to leave my place of prayer and worship in the morning for any reason from now on until I know for sure that you are with me," as in God. He was praying that to God. He made that commitment, and I think it was the next day he went to school, and school started for him at 8 a.m. And he was in the habit of getting up kind of late and rolling out of bed and throwing some clothes on and walking 20 minutes to school and usually getting there about 10 minutes late. But he had this teacher, and he used to use this terrible story about there being a funeral procession, and the funeral procession held him up as he was walking to school, and that's why he was late, and the teacher just kind of brushed it off every day there was a funeral. But then something changed, and he had a new teacher, and this teacher was a communist, and he was really hardcore. Nobody crossed this teacher. And so Pavel wakes up one morning. He's supposed to be at school at 8 o'clock, and it takes 20 minutes to walk there, and he wakes up at 7:30. And he's faced with the decision, does he get to school on time with this strict teacher, or does he keep his commitment to God and not leave without knowing that God was with him? And he chose the latter. And he spent a long time in his worship time, and visions were flashing before him of the angry-faced professor. But he still spent that time. He got to school. He got there at 10 o'clock. Okay? And he was so worried. He'd totally missed the first period. He thought he might be expelled from school on the first day of the year. And he gets there and he slips in, and his classmate says, I don't know how you manage this, but the teacher was sick. And not only that, but the substitute teacher forgot to take attendance, so no one knows you weren't even here. And his life just went like that, where God just took care of the details when he was faithful to him. And I know that perhaps you've seen that in your own life. I remember when I started university, a busy time for students, as you know. I did commit to make God first and to always have my devotions, even if I was up late the night before or had to leave early in the morning. And I did do that, and God really, really did bless and multiplied the time that I had left to study. So I know that it is true. So priority one is always to be God, and then the rest of our priorities we are left to figure out for ourselves. So as students, your priorities would be relationships with your family and friends. It's important to invest in people. And then obviously your studies are a priority for you while you're a student. As a young professional, at the beginning of this year, instead of writing a long list of New Year's resolutions that I often do, I decided to categorize my life into 4 main broad goals for the year. And I've used those goals to then assess the types of things that I'm going to fill my time with. Do they fit into those 4 goals for this year? And because there are so many things that I could say yes to, and so many opportunities, and so many things that we could do, but having those goals and knowing what I choose to fill my life with at this season of my life doesn't mean that I won't do those things later on, but perhaps right now it doesn't fit into my goals for the year. And prioritizing on a smaller scale means that every day you know what your most important task is to complete. And you do that thing first. So I don't know about you, but often my most important task is the task that I don't want to do, because it's the hardest one, and it's on my calendar for today. And I get to school and I teach my classes and whatever else, and then I have time to sit down and do my most important task. But there's lots of little things that I can do. I can clean my desk, and I can do a bit of marking, and I can go and have this meeting with this person and help this student, and maybe practice the choir repertoire a little bit. And I feel like I've had a really productive day because I've done lots of things. I get to the end of the day, and that most important task is still not done. So it's like filling a bucket. If you had a bucket of big rocks and a bucket of sand, or half a bucket of each, and you're trying to fit it into one bucket, if you put the sand in first, all the little tasks, you'll never fit the big rocks in. But if you put the rocks in first, all of the sand and the little pebbles will fill in the gaps, and you'll get everything done. So doing those big tasks, those most important things first, will enable you to get everything done, and that's working smarter instead of working harder. Number 2 is time budgeting. Psalm 90 verse 12 tells us, "So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts to wisdom." In just the same way that we need to determine the different kind of expenses that we have when we're putting together a financial budget and figuring out where our money is going, we need to do the same for our time. Where are we spending our time, and what kinds of activities do we need to fill our time with? Something that you might like to do is keep a time diary for a few days, or maybe a week. It's where you write down how much time you spend on each task. You find out how long things are taking. It can be very eye-opening. I have an app on my phone that I just got, and it, without me knowing, tracks all of my screen time and all of the apps that I open, and tells me how long I spend in each of them. And the first few days, I was horrified. Like, hours of my day was spent on my phone. I mean, of course, that's emailing and doing work-related things and so forth, but still, that's hours of my day in front of this tiny little screen. So sometimes learning where our time is going is very, very good for us. And then once we know where we're spending our time, then we can more easily plan how we actually want to spend our time. And then we can keep an eye out for time spending leaks. When we talk about budgeting, the consumer class, maths class will know about this. Okay, we look at spending leaks, those little things where your money just disappears to. For some people, it might be buying their coffee every day, or buying the newspaper, or all these little things where our money just disappears to. And time can be like that as well. So we need to identify some of those time spending leaks, things like Facebook, or other social media sites. How many of you have gone on there and found yourself there half an hour later when you meant to just go on and quickly check? Or reading news sites, checking the news for the day, and then something catches your eye. Even things like visiting with our friends, and while all those are good things, sometimes they can get a little bit out of hand, and we end up spending more time than we really should doing those things. This is where daily schedules can be very useful. You are very fortunate here to have a pre-made schedule that's given to you on registration day. But there are other parts of your day that you are in charge of yourself. And you might want to put a schedule together for yourself for those times, so that you can already get into the habit of learning to manage your time. Because when you're in charge of all 24 hours of your day, you already have the habit of knowing how to work to a schedule. I was listening to a podcast recently. Actually, I was listening to the podcast being recorded, and it was about time management. And this person suggested that in the same way that, have you heard the idea that you should eat till you're about 80% full? Okay? In the same way that we know that, then we should fill our lives to about 80 or 85%. To leave about 15% left over for emergencies, because there will be emergencies, and also for those little spontaneous things in life. You know, we need to give ourselves time to stop and actually watch the sunset for a few minutes, or to sit down and pat our dog, or maybe to pick some flowers on the way to class in the morning, or write a note and leave it on someone's desk. It's often the little spontaneous things that we do in life that give us the greatest joy and create the most happy memories. And so it's important that we take time to smell the roses, as is often said. Okay, so we have looked at prioritizing our time, and then once we've prioritized it, we can budget our time accordingly. So now we're going to look at some of the nitty-gritty details of managing time. And this might be where you want to take some notes. If you have some pen and paper, we are going to go through 5 practical areas that can improve your efficiency and your time managing skills. Number 1 is quit multitasking. The truth is that there are very few people who can actually multitask. And by multitasking, that's doing 2 or more things at the same time, simultaneously. I'm not sure whether Leonardo da Vinci mastered the art of drawing with one hand and taking notes with the other, but if he did, that would be multitasking. What we do is task switching, and we do it a lot. Okay, so we have this task and all these different things on the go, and we switch between them quickly. It's not really actually multitasking, and it's very inefficient because our poor brains are continually switching from one thing to the other and losing focus. Let me tell you what this is my number 1 weakness. It's probably why I put it there as number 1. Let me tell you what a typical hour at my desk might look like, often. Okay, my task, I need to sit down and prepare some lessons. So that's my main task. So I start preparing my lesson, and my phone goes off. And so I go over and read the message that I just got. I may or may not reply to it, but I read it. So I've been distracted. So I go back to the lesson plan. And then an email comes in and reminds me, oh no, I really need to go online and check how far it is between Mountain Home and Clinton and know when we can schedule this concert for. And so I go onto Google Maps and figure that out, and then send off the email that has those details in it. And then I remember, oh no, I need to order music for choir. I really need to order that. So I go onto Sheet Music Plus, and while the web page is loading, because you know the internet's kind of slow here, while that's loading, I go back to my lesson planning. And then when the page is loaded, I go back and order the music. And then my grader comes over and asks me to grade this, like one thing that I forgot. Oh, okay, so I grab a red pen. So now I've got my lesson plan, and I'm ordering music, and I've got a red pen, and I'm doing some grading on the side, okay? And I could go on and on with all the different things that tend to be happening at once in an hour at my desk. Does that sound a little bit familiar to any of you? In reality, I'm not multitasking, I'm just task switching, and I'm becoming very inefficient as a result. So here's what my afternoon looked like yesterday. I had to prepare this presentation. So that was my task. So I sat at my desk, and I switched my phone to airplane mode, and I put all the clutter away from my desk, and I turned off the notifications on my computer. And then I used a little bit of self-control to not be distracted by the ads that popped up on the side of things I was researching and so forth. And I set my timer on my phone for 50 minutes. And I focused on writing and researching for 50 minutes. And when the timer went off, I took a bit of a break to just do some of those other smaller tasks, reply to an email or something else that needed to be done. And then after a little bit of a break, I did the same thing, turned everything off, set the timer for 50 minutes. And I was amazed at how quickly things got done when I was focusing on that one task for a set amount of time. We've really got to stop our multitasking. And in our generation, it's harder than ever because we're the generation full of notifications and alerts and reminders and all of these sorts of things that actually reduce our productivity. So this brings me to point number 2. We need to adopt a good work-break ratio. Huffington Post commented on some research done in which an app was used to track employees' computer usage, and the results found that the most efficient workers focus for 52 minutes, followed by a 17-minute break. And a break doesn't necessarily mean taking a nap or making yourself a cup of herbal tea. It might simply be doing a different, smaller task, like replying to an email or printing a document or something like that. Researchers from Florida State University found that elite performers from a variety of different disciplines worked in intervals of no more than 90 minutes before giving themselves about a 20-minute break of something else. So the idea is that you do something very focused for no more than 90 minutes. Maybe 50 or an hour is even better to just focus for that amount of time. And then you can go off and give yourself a break and do something else and then come back and focus for that amount of time. These seem to produce the most efficient results. You can do that in your study, you can do that in your work, you can do that in a variety of different ways. Number 3 is the 2-minute rule. So there's lots of little moments in our time that disappear that we don't grasp hold of. And so Steve Olensky, who is a very successful entrepreneur, suggests and uses the 2-minute rule to capitalize on those small windows of time. So his idea is that he suggests that when a task comes in, and obviously at an opportunity that we can do it, if we know that it's going to take 2 minutes or less to do it, we do it right away. It actually takes less time to do it right away than to come back to it because of our brain thinking, and we actually think about it so much and so forth that it takes more time to think about it than it does to do it. And anything else that's going to take more than 2 minutes, we might put that aside on a to-do list to come back to later. And in a similar way, David Allen, who has written a book on time management and efficiency and productivity, suggests that the most efficient people have a list of these 2-minute tasks that they can draw from when they have small windows of time. So these might be things like clearing out your inbox, or checking voicemail. You might need to photocopy a page from a book or approve some kind of request or something that's just going to take a very short amount of time. They have a list of these things, whether it's in their mind or a physical list. So when those little windows of opportunities crop up, you can do something useful with that time and just knock over these little things. And it also gets our efficiency muscle working. So we start off being efficient by using these windows of opportunity, and it helps us to be efficient with the bigger projects as well. Number 4 is tapping into our circadian rhythm. So these are nerve cells, or nerve cells control our circadian rhythm, which is responsible for our sleep-wake cycle, certain hormone releases. It also helps to control our emotions and our energy levels. And people that, for example, international pilots and so forth, with so many interruptions to their circadian rhythm, it can, over time, be very difficult for them, really reduce their efficiency and perhaps even have effects on their energy and their emotions. But more than just knowing what time we should sleep and wake, there is some research that suggests, number 1, that we complete our best analytical work first within a few hours of waking. Psalm 5 verse 3 says, "My voice shalt thou hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning will I direct my prayer unto thee and look up." History is filled with examples of men and women who discovered the magic of the morning hours. And they particularly devoted a portion of that time to God. John Wesley got up at 4 a.m. to spend 1 to 2 hours in prayer each morning. John Quincy Adams studied his Bible first thing every morning. Hudson Taylor, that missionary to China, during his busiest times, would get up at 3 a.m. to pray. And Ellen White herself would often rise during the early hours of the morning to talk to God or write down the messages that he was giving her. Even Jesus, we were told, would get up before daybreak to spend time in prayer. Perhaps it is time that we tapped into this period of good analytical focus where we can really think clearly and devote the best part of that time to Jesus. And then the rest of that time we should use for those tasks that require the most, really require our cogs to turn, so to speak. So things like study. It's a good thing we have classes in the morning and not in the afternoon. Perhaps if you have a study hall in the morning, it might be the time that you do your calculus homework. Okay, something that requires your analytical thinking ability. After lunch, and you've probably noticed this, maybe you notice it more when you get old like me, but your alertness really takes a dive after lunch. You get sometimes really sleepy, and part of that's because you're digesting food and all of these sorts of things. But some researchers have shown that because of that, your analytical ability goes down, but it's the best time to do creative tasks. So that time after lunch might be the best time to practice your musical instrument, or even much of your homework requires more creative than analytical ability. Maybe you have a story to write. So you do your story after lunch and you do your calculus homework in the morning. So thinking about the time of day that is best suited to things. And perhaps, interestingly to me, Dr. Jared Kennedy noted that most Olympic records are broken later in the afternoon. Apparently, muscle strength, lung capacity, hand-eye coordination, and joint flexibility peaks between 4 and 6 p.m. So utilizing the afternoon, particularly the later afternoon, for manual labor or exercise might be the best use of that time. So thinking about your day from that, start with the analytical, move to the creative, then finish with the physical as best as we can. And last but not least, number 5 is we need to get enough sleep. So I don't know when it happened, but sometime in my generation it did, where we talk about our lack of sleep as a bragging right. Like, man, I only got 4 hours sleep last night. And we say it like it's a good thing, like I am so devoted. I have the greatest work ethic. I only slept for 4 hours. Okay, in reality, we should be ashamed of the fact that we only slept for 4 hours last night, especially if it's by choice, particularly if it's by choice. Sleep deprivation produces a lack of productivity that cost American businesses last year $63 billion. Okay? Sleep deprivation has a huge impact on our work output. And it is very important that we get enough sleep if we want to manage our time efficiently. So Da Vinci's idea of only sleeping for 2 to 4 hours a day to get more hours to do things was not a good plan. Also, researchers suggest that the hours of sleep before midnight are worth twice as much as those after midnight. Maybe you've heard that. Maybe you've heard your parents say that or your teachers say that. Actually, modern research confirms it. So if it's necessary, it's better to go to bed early and not burn the midnight oil, and then to wake up earlier in the morning, rather than the other way around. So being at a place like OH means that a lot of your time is being managed for you here in the boarding setting. And it's true for anybody. When you're employed by somebody, much of your time is managed. You have to turn up to work at a certain time and stay till a certain time. When you have classes wherever you are. Even if you're not in a boarding school, you've got classes to go to and things like that. So much of our time is managed for us. But no matter the extent to which our time is being managed for us, we can start putting these things into practice. There's still a lot that we have control over, particularly our efficiency and our focus in when we are on a particular task. You can especially think about how you spend, for the academy students, the college students, I guess, have a little bit more self-governed time. For the academy students, you can especially think about how you'll use your free time, your evening study hall times, and things like that. So breaking all of this down, number one, the most important thing is to prioritize the things in your life. And remembering that God always comes first. Next, we should learn to budget our time accordingly to our priorities. And then, with those two excellent plans in place, we have our priorities and we have our schedule sorted out, and we've thought about how we're going to budget our time, then we need to start putting it into action. And we can use some of the efficiency building skills that we've talked about, plus many others, to carry out that plan. And the most relevant factor in learning good time management, if we want to think about why this is relevant, our time isn't even ours to begin with. It belongs to God. And as we mentioned earlier, He's given it to us, and we are under the most solemn obligation to improve it to His glory. Let's close with a word of prayer. Dear Father in heaven, I thank you so much for the gift of time and that you trust us with this. And you've given us counsel and principles that we can follow. Thank you for making it clear to us where our first priority lies. And I pray that as we leave here that we will make the commitment to keep you first, always, for the rest of our lives. And that we will also learn to be more efficient with the time that we have, to continue to improve it and to grow and to master many of these things that will make us more able workers for you, and to be able to do more in the salvation of souls and preparing the world for your second coming. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.